Hi everyone, my name is Nicola Piggott. I'm one of the co-founders of the Story Mob. We are a communications and PR consultancy focused solely on esports. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about why esports communications matter, especially in such a fan-driven economy. And what I mean by that is we're going to talk a little bit about the things that we say, the way that we say them, and why I think that esports pretty much needs to grow up a bit when it comes to shaping communication strategies. Now, as you guys all know, esports is a really young industry, and young industries take time to build up a lot of practices that hit the target, including communications. We can learn from things all around us, sports, entertainment, but nothing is going to quite address our specific needs. We need to adapt to fit an audience that's more connected, more demanding, and more intolerant of bullshit than any that's come before it. So we set up the Story Mob because we think there's a genuine gap in the market for brands, teams, companies that want to reach this esports audience and can't quite speak their language. Equally, we think there's lots that we can do to improve for those who are already in the esports ecosystem. If you think about the examples that we have in front of us, like baseball or basketball, these are sports that have had, in many cases, over a century to get this right. We haven't had that luxury, but what we do have is the ability to reinvent how we use communications, what channels we use, and how best we speak to this new audience. It's important that we're at the very forefront of that journey because esports, by its nature, has a more connected and authentic voice than any sport in history. So to help teams and brands being scared off future campaigns, future investments, we came up with some overall commandments which will hopefully help them out and hopefully help you guys out when you're thinking about communications in esports specifically. We should really have gone for 10 commandments if we were going to be super biblical, but we have gone for 7. And the first one is to create value. Now, this one is specifically for brands that are looking to enter the esports space and to turn that investment into positive brand association. Basically, to move things from a one-way conversation, which is an investment, to a dialogue. The good news is, esports fans are super open to this. They love it when brands add value to their sport and want to talk to them in an authentic way. But this conversation only really works when it's clear to fans that you're looking to create something for them that they don't already have. There's a couple of good examples of this out in the market. So Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew created a league aiming to give up-and-coming CSGO players a path to participate in pro leagues, in this case, the ESL Pro League. It's difficult sometimes for young pros to know exactly where to go if they want to have a pro career. And that hopefully fills that gap. IEM is another example of that. The Intel Extreme Master competition has been supporting esports from its very earliest years in the West and creating tournament opportunities where previously there weren't any. On another scale, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but the Red Bull Kumite, it brings together the fighting game community. Fighting game community is traditionally a bit underserved with live events, and Red Bull creates localized tournaments and a chance to participate and to get together that wouldn't otherwise exist. And then we work with Team Liquid as one of our clients, and Team Liquid recently partnered with Alienware to custom build a training facility. Now, the majority of teams are still living and working in the same space, so to have this kind of customized, tech-rich space for teams to train is pretty unusual. So what all of this basically goes to show is that any communication strategy starts from a really simple place, which is, who are we? What are our values? And when you're a company that's making powerful gestures like this that speak to your intent, that's a really strong place to start from. Okay, commandment number 2, be authentic. As I said earlier, esports fans are pretty notorious for being able to sniff out bullshit. That's why you have to have an authentic voice in the space. It absolutely cannot be faked. This is more a commandment for companies, but they really shouldn't be hiring people who don't understand esports to be the voice of their company. And you'd be surprised how much that happens. If you're new to esports or if it's your first professional experience in the space, you have to be humble. You have to learn from those around you. Admit when you're learning and when you make mistakes. Basically, there are no shortcuts when it comes to esports. It's a very tribal community that will call you out on your mistakes. Commandment 3, Be timely. So something a little strange has happened in our post-internet world. When I first started working in communications, which was in an agency in London, a couple of things happened when the phone rang with a crisis. Number one, you picked up the phone, which you don't currently do these days. It's more of an internet kind of thing. And number two, it normally meant you had a couple of hours to figure out what the crisis was, to get your shit together with your team, to calm the client down, and to focus on putting out the fire, maybe put together like a press statement. Bad news is, in today's esports world, that window of a couple of hours has pretty much shortened to a couple of minutes. So hopefully you're all familiar with Reddit, but if you look on Reddit post any big crisis for a team or for a tournament organizer, you'll see one thing over and over, and that's Reddit fans saying, where is the info? Where are you? Respond to us, we need more information. So it's no secret that esports has a pretty healthy, pretty thriving crisis communications need. Between you and I, it's one of the reasons why we are an agency and able to do what we do. But this is because, as I said earlier, we're a young industry. We're redefining rule sets and we're moving goalposts, so crises are going to come up. This means you can count on them happening, and you can also count on esports fans calling you out the minute a crisis happens. As we like to say somewhat grandiosely, a global audience that's forged in the fire of the internet never forgets. So with an eye on keeping fires under control, here's a few quick tips when it comes to esports crisis communications. React quickly. As we've said, like, time is of the essence here. It doesn't mean that you need to jump into any communications challenge before you have all the facts or know exactly what you're going to do. But for esports fans, we equate being acknowledged with being heard and being respected. So recognize that you're being asked a question, even if you don't have the answer, and let fans and audiences know that you'll get back to them when you have something more concrete. Commit to something. So this is sort of the gold standard of any crisis communications. You need to commit to something, otherwise your apology or your explanation seems super hollow. You must commit to something, even if it's just a timeline as to when you're going to get back to fans with a complete response. But you got to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Show your face. So as humans, we equate trust with a couple of different things. We think about what people are saying, we think about the language that they're using, but we also visualize their faces. So when it comes to crisis communications, you need to be able to equate an apology with a person. This means putting a face and a spokesperson out there to express regret or to explain what's going to happen next. Otherwise, it's going to fall pretty flat. Follow-up. Once the immediate crisis has died down, as communications pros, it's pretty tempting for us to just sweep it under the carpet, forget that it happened at all, and never refer to it again. But as we said, esports fans and the internet never forget. So you need to show fans that you haven't forgotten. You've learned what went wrong, and you're ready to put those new practices into action. Okay, commandment 4, be media savvy. So traditional sports actually have this pretty down. They understand the power that the media can hold because they've had years and years to work with them. Esports doesn't have that same kind of, symbiotic relationship with media, and it's something we need to improve as an industry. So there's a couple of things that I'd recommend when you're thinking about any media relations campaigns. Build a relationship. Independent media is one of the best possible sources to build and to strengthen a relationship between a player and their fan, or a team and their fans. It's an unbiased, unvarnished look at the inner workings of a team, ideally, and it's something that esports fans trust because they feel like it comes from a relatively unbiased source. My favorite example of this is a player's Tribune piece on Faker, who's the greatest League of Legends player of all time, debatably. They called him the unkillable Demon King. It's pretty rad. And it's just one example of a different way that I, as a Faker fan, can get a glimpse into what drives him. When we're talking about driving the narrative, another thing that traditional media can do for you is most teams And most companies are still very much in the market for traditional investment and business opportunities. Esports is getting there. It's getting more and more concrete and more stable. But make no mistake, it's still a new sport in the grand scheme of things, and it's still pretty fragile. So your reputation matters when it comes to attracting the kind of people and the kind of investment opportunities that can help esports last for the long term. And third-party media is one of the best ways to do this. Your reputation matters, and how you are perceived in mainstream third-party media can help drive the kind of result that you're after. So when we think about driving the mainstream conversation, it's good for us to cast our mind back a bit. I started working in esports in 2012. And in 2012, 2013, you saw a lot of pieces, pretty snarky, pretty snide pieces about how, esports pros were just nerds in the basements, how they couldn't get girlfriends, and how everybody was pretty much wasting their time. You see less and less of this now because the mainstream is pretty slavish when it comes to appreciating things that have a lot of money running through them. But it's still important that we help drive that conversation, and it's still important that we get better at storytelling to audiences outside of our own if we're hoping to be understood and if we're hoping to be supported. Non-pandering stories help. They help chip away at the fiction that we shouldn't be taken seriously because we play our sport with keyboards and not with basketballs. So cut the bullshit. We've talked a little bit about crises, but there's very few people in the esports world that are using media to their advantage when it comes to crisis situations, when it comes to setting the record straight. An independent voice can go a long way when it comes to admitting a mistake or regaining trust. So it's important that you fold media into your crisis plans, even if they've covered that crisis with a little bit more relish than you would like. They can be an excellent voice for you to speak back to your community. Commandment number 5, be transparent. Esports has a closer and more intimate relationship with its fans than any other sport in history. So this is a sport in which athletes have built their fan following, not just on their competitive performance, but on streaming and building close ties with fans. As a double lift fan, I can watch him stream, I can ask him questions, I can figure out how he does that tricksy thing that he does on the NALCS stage. But if I'm a Steph Curry fan, it's hard to imagine me asking him questions, while he takes layups with a GoPro strapped to his head where I can watch everything that he's doing and he can respond to me directly. So this is pretty unique, and this is how our industry grew up. Transparency, even in times of crisis, isn't an option anymore. It's a must, because that's what this audience is used to. Esports fans are loyal to brands and to teams who treat them with respect. You need to speak to them like adults, and you'll be a lot more successful in getting their attention. All right, we've reached commandment 6. Be truthful about who you are. This one should be a no-brainer. I shouldn't have to tell anybody to not lie about who they are, but this is a little bit more complex. Being truthful in esports communications mean defining your values and then sticking to them. So a good example of this in reverse would be if a team claims to be the most player-friendly team and then gets caught out trying to shortchange a pro on their wages or not give them the money they deserve. Or a brand who enters esports for the first time with a lot of fanfare, saying this is the first step on a journey of years and years, and then, pulls their funding after 3 months. Don't be surprised if fans make fun of you when that happens. Or if you're a tournament organizer who claim you put on the very best, the very most high-tech events, and then you have a tournament that grinds to a halt or has technical troubles. Don't be surprised when you get hundreds of thousands of angry posts. So when you show who you really are, esports fans are going to believe you, not what you say, but what you do. So make sure that the things that you're saying in your communications and the values that you're laying claim to are the ones you intend to live by, because fans will hold you to it. All right, last commandment, 7, be bold. I focused a lot on what things can go wrong. I'm a comms pro by my nature. I'm pretty risk averse. But it's also good for us to take a moment to remember all the things that can go right. Esports, for so many of us, and the reason we're all so excited about it, is because it offers this incredible, unique opportunity to reinvent the way you approach a lot of challenges. This also applies to communications. It's an amazing place to take a risk. Think about, just for example, I don't know how many of you saw it, but the Blizzard post over Christmas, which was Jeff Kaplan sitting in front of a roaring fire for 10 hours, doing nothing else, just staring into the camera. Pretty awesome. Like, I can't think of any other industry in which that would be a thing, but I loved it. I watched at least 4 hours of it, and it's just a good example of, like, this is such a unique opportunity to take a risk. And leaders of esports, this isn't a great example of this, but leaders of esports are more visible, more vulnerable than ever before. And some of the most memorable moments in esports come when they're unfiltered, they're unedited, they're just sharing their thoughts with the community. So this is the time to put a stake in the ground as a leader, because you have a audience that is so receptive to a two-way conversation. So those are the ends of the commandments. They're by no means an exhaustive list of everything you need. It's not going to inoculate you against disaster or guarantee that fans are going to be receptive to everything that you would like them to be receptive to. It's certainly not going to save you from crises. But it's a good way to think about how you approach communications within this sort of brave new esports world. If we've learned anything from esports, it's that we need to be asking ourselves constantly within this young industry, what can we be doing better? When it comes to communications, the reason why I'm so passionate about what I do is because I believe that esports is the most exciting fan community of all time. The most open, the most receptive, the most passionate. And I think it's such an exciting opportunity to speak one-on-one with them and to get it right, if we can only be worthy of that fan community. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys.